Right guys, so what we've got here is a past paper from the old A-Starter Business GCSE for Edexcel Pearson. Now, I believe it's the same examiner that's writing these papers. There's likely to be similarity on the new 9-to-1 versions of these, so it's worth having a look at some of the financial calculations here. Now, in this circumstance, we've got a nice break-even chart here. We can see our total revenue line, of course. We can see our total costs. We can see our fixed costs, and we can see our variable costs. Now, just make sure that you don't just think these are logically total revenue, that's therefore the fixed cost. Don't make that mistake, okay? All right, so you may even want to label these accordingly so that we can see, for instance, that that is our total revenue, that is our total cost, that is our fixed cost, and that is our variable cost. So we can see our break-even graph. We can then see that we got an easy 2-mark question here. But I think for the 2018 series, students were only getting about 0.73 out of 2 on average nationally. So this is a question where something's going wrong. So let's make amends to that right now. Okay, so how do we sort this out? What is meant by the term break-even point? Well, of course, we know it's the point where total revenue equals total cost. We can see that there. We can see that it corresponds to 1,250 apps being sold by this producer, Shifty Jellies. So you'd want to make a note of that. You'd also want to say that it's where total revenue equals total costs, of course. Notice our total revenue curve here. Notice our total cost curve, fixed cost, and our variable cost curve. Now, what else could you say? Well, you could also say that the break-even point equals the point where fixed cost divided by the unit contribution, price minus variable cost, and let's write this in, so we're just picking this information up. That is what tells us the break-even point in terms of the number of units you got to sell. All right, so there's a number of ways of looking at this. You could also say at this point here, there is no profit, there is no loss. Remember, this is the area of loss, this triangle. This area of the triangle is profit. Okay, so let's move this on. Wow, it's a bit of a doddle. Look at that. Okay. Well, we've pretty much already done it, haven't we? We've said that it's 1,250, okay? And we can see that right there. So that's the point where total revenue equals total cost. Let's take a look at what we've got here. It's expecting to sell 3,000 copies of its weather app. Calculate the margin of safety for this product. This is an absolute gimme as well, this question. So margin of safety, to calculate this, and this is the first thing you want to do, is put down that it's the actual output minus the break-even point level of output. So we've got actual output minus break-even point. So there it goes. Now, if we look at this actual output, well, it tells us here that it's 3,000. So we've therefore got 3,000, and what is the break-even point? Well, we'd worked that out for this previous question. We'd put it down here. It's 1,250. So therefore, we would want to actually show what that margin of safety actually is, and therefore, of course, it's going to be 1,750. Again, it's an absolute steal. Just look at how you can actually work that out. There you can see the break-even point in terms of the number of apps you've got to sell, and this is the level of output here. So you can see that difference. That difference is your margin of safety. All right, so the difference between break-even and how far you are into your profit zone is your margin of safety. Okay, next one. Calculate Shifty Jellies' profit loss if it manages to sell 3,000 copies of its weather app. Show your workings and the formula used. So just notice that it asks for that formula. So you could go straight in and you could just do the standard total revenue minus total cost. Means of doing this. Okay, now that's fine. It's just that takes a little bit of time. Now within that, you then need to work out price times quantity, and to work out your total cost, where you need to do your fixed cost plus your total variable cost. Now, as such, there's quite a bit of calculating to do there. An alternative, if you're in a real hurry, is to look at the actual total revenue up here at 3,000 units, because we're still dealing with 3,000 units. So we can see that total revenue is, of course, 6,000 minus the total cost. Now, the problem is that isn't terribly accurate. It looks as though it's around about 3,200 perhaps, okay? So you could kind of hazard a guess on that if you're really pushed for time. My favorite way of doing this is to use the unit contribution though past the margin of safety. Given that you've established the margin of safety is 1,750, what we want to do is use that margin of safety with the unit contribution. So if we take the price minus the variable cost and then multiply that by the margin of safety, okay, now that will work very nicely for us as well. Okay, so let's just do that. So we've got the price is £2, okay, so £2 minus 40p. Now we then multiply through by that margin of safety, 1,750. So let's put that through. And what do we get? Well, we get £1.60 times 1,750, which equals 2,800. Okay, so it tells us really that, all right, yeah, I was right here, and that was 2,800, but you might just be a little bit away from that. So, you know, we've just made sure we've got the marks there. If you're in a real hurry, just look at this and take away that and move on. Okay, right, great stuff.